Anything come to mind when I mentioned kind of just tracking and time blocking and the not so sexy parts of growth?
Yeah, I mean, that story is amazing, and it makes me feel less amazing about what I did, because I don't think I had the intentionality of being that disciplined. I was just in love with the process of becoming free. And my path for freedom was real estate sales. And I started to get good at it, and I started to get more business. So I learned later on a lot of help from coaches like yourself when we coached together about the importance of tracking specific KPIs, specific things. But early on, if I'm being honest with myself, it was less about that and more about, hey, I found a way to be successful, and I went all in on that success. And for me, the one thing that I kept in my mind was like, I needed to have 30 or more listings at all time. Because we're talking about like 2007, 8, 9 era, when getting a listing wasn't the problem. It was selling it and not going broke in the process, because you could get 100 listings and sell 2 of them and go broke in the process. But I had this thermometer, if you will, of having 30 listings at all times. And I would do anything to get those listings. I was mailing people. I was door knocking. I was, door knocking through farming communities. I was in a BNI group, but it was always like the thing that I was hunting was a listing, because a listing to me was better than a sale, because it was an opportunity for multiple sales. And I think looking back, what I did well is I made some things happen, and I created stories out of those successes. And I told those stories to all my prospects. So if I got on the phone with you and you were a cold lead, I'd be like, hey, Lars, it's John from Remax. How are you doing, man? And hey, you weren't expecting my call, but you came into my funnel this way. And hey, man, you remind me of somebody. And I would just start telling stories. People in my office thought I was crazy, because I would dive into a story before I even figured out what they were looking for. But the story made their guard go down, and they would open up. And then I would get into the regular model of following up with them and finding out, LP Mama, where they were at, what were they looking for. But I felt like my ability to tell stories brought people's guard down and opened them up to possibility in the marketplace, because let's face it, it was a scary market back then. And I would get people to do business with me that way. And then we would go get more listings that were distressed or foreclosed on, and we would go get more buyers, and we would create stories of those buyers getting think back, Lars, to your time in the marketplace back then during the last recession. I know that you can bring to mind properties that, man, could you imagine buying those properties today at those prices that we saw then? Unbelievable life-changing opportunities for people to invest in real estate.
Yeah. And there's something that you just said there that I want to pick up on. In the vein of the market that John and I went through, being in the same MLS, we had 15,000 agents on our roster that went down to 5,000. Now that was similar across the country, but you and I were at an event recently in Cabo, and I think it was Brent that asked the question, or maybe Gene asked the question, how many of you have been in, or one of the speakers, been in real estate for less than 2 years, less than 3 years, or 5 years? And it was most of the room.
It was crazy, right? I picked up on it too.
Right. And you made me feel even older. I'm going to turn 50 this year, so made me feel even older. But I don't think most of the industry knows what's coming and how to stay in business. So some of this stuff is man, it's not the sexiest stuff. We're not talking about digital marketing or, Facebook ads, or we're not talking about the next mousetrap, but none of that matters if you don't have and the thing I wanted to pick up on, I want to ask you, what was the vision? So for you, it was, you were willing to Will Smith die on the treadmill because you had this vision, right? What was that vision that you had? Because some people are carrot and stick. So for you, it was a carrot. You finally found something that was going to get you out of probably a not so, wealthy childhood or whatever, right? What was the thing? What was the vision that kind of you painted for yourself? And was it just in your mind, or did you have a vision board, or what did it look like?
Yeah. So even when I was very broke and I was making less than 100,000 a year, I had these vision books, and I would cut out stuff in magazines and paste them in there. And what happened is the team, like we talked about earlier, was a natural progression. Like I just did the team because it was the next thing to do in my coaching program. And I wanted to like rise to the top of whatever program I was in. So I did that without giving it too much thought. And in that 3-year process, things that were in my original goal book came to fruition, like eerily so. Like the house I got and the car I was driving, like eerily similar to what was in my book. And when I started to see that, I started to have a greater belief and courage to set bigger goals, which ultimately happened. But when I started to run the team and I saw that I could actually help other people do what I did in a way that would impact them positively and me positively, that's when I switched and I went from wanting to be a real estate agent to wanting to own a real estate business. And it was probably a combination of, you know, the coaches and the people I was exposed to, like yourself, but something flipped a switch in me. And I said, okay, I'm now understanding what Zig Ziglar always said, which is if you help enough people get what they want, you'll get everything you want. And my whole world opened up then. And, you know, I went from being a team leader where I would feel guilty if I wasn't out there grinding every day to realizing that I could have more impact if I was helping other people and I was setting up systems and processes to bring them in. And that's when the tracking really took off for me.